Admiral Zexai pressed his six-fingered hands against the cold metal of the bridge window. Outside, his beautiful fleet was dying. Ships that had taken decades to build were breaking apart in bright flashes of light. Each flash meant hundreds of his people were gone forever. The enemy ships looked like giant metal insects. They moved in perfect lines, never making mistakes. The Kitharans called them the Devourers because that was what they did. They ate entire worlds. They had already destroyed 17 different species across the galaxy. Now they had come for the Kitharans. Admiral, his second-in-command, spoke with a shaking voice. The battleship Crystal Song just exploded. All 800 crew members are dead. Zexai closed his large blue eyes. 800 more names to add to the list of the dead. The list was getting very long. When this battle started 3 days ago, he had commanded 200 ships and 50,000 brave warriors. Now he could count his remaining ships on his hands. The planet below them was beautiful. Kythera Prime had crystal cities that caught sunlight and threw rainbows across the sky. Gardens floated in the air between the towers. Millions of families lived happy lives in those cities. Now, the buildings were burning. Giant enemy ships hung over the cities like dark clouds, shooting down at anything that moved. "Sir, we are getting reports from the surface," the communications officer said. Her voice was tired. She had been working for 3 days without sleep. The evacuation centers are full. People are hiding in the deep caves, but the enemy is using some kind of scanner. They can see through rock. Zexai nodded. He had expected this. The Devourers were very good at finding people. They had practice from 17 dead worlds. His tactical officer looked up from his screens. The young man's face was pale with fear. "Admiral, they are forming a new pattern. My computer says it is a harvesting formation." The Admiral knew what that meant. The Devourers would stop playing with them now. They would position their big ships around the planet and start taking everything. They would suck up the oceans, strip away the atmosphere, and crack open the planet's core to get the metals inside. Any Kitharan still alive would be captured and studied. Then they would be killed. "How long do we have?" Zexai asked. 12 hours, sir. Maybe less. 12 hours until his entire species stopped existing. Zexai had sent messages to every friendly species he knew. The Altarians were too far away and had their own problems. The Vagan Confederacy had stopped answering calls 3 months ago. Everyone said they were probably dead too. Even the mighty Centauri Empire had gone quiet when the Devourers reached their space. No help was coming. The Kitharans would die alone, just like the 17 species before them. "Admiral, what are your orders?" his weapons officer asked. Zexai looked around the bridge at his crew. They were all young, maybe 30 years old in human terms. They should have had long lives ahead of them. They should have had children and grandchildren. Instead, they would die in the next few hours fighting an enemy they could not beat. But they were still Kitharans. His people had spent thousands of years building beautiful things, creating art, and studying the stars. They would not beg for mercy from machines. "All ships?" he said into his microphone. "This is Admiral Zexai. We are going to attack their harvesting formation. We cannot win, but we can make them remember us. We will fight until the last ship is gone. We will protect our world until our final breath." Across the communication channels, voices answered, him. Ship captains who knew they were about to die still sounded brave. Gunners who had not slept in days checked their weapons one more time. Engineers made sure the engines would keep running, even when the ships were falling apart. The 12 remaining Kitharan ships turned toward the enemy fleet. Against them were thousands of Devourer vessels. Each enemy ship was bigger and stronger than anything the Kitharans had ever built. The largest Devourer ship was the size of a small moon. It had weapons that could destroy a city with one shot. "Ships, attack speed," Zexai ordered. The Kitharan ships accelerated toward certain death. Their engines glowed bright blue in the darkness of space. Behind them, their beautiful planet continued to burn. On the enemy flagship, Ancient Machine, minds calculated the battle. The Kitharans had brave hearts, but courage could not stop superior technology. The battle would be over in 20 minutes. Then the harvesting could begin. As his ship flew toward the enemy, Zexai thought about his family. His mate and 3 children had been evacuated to the deep caves yesterday. Maybe they would survive a few extra hours. Maybe they would die quickly and without pain. He hoped they would remember the good times and not be afraid at the end. The first enemy weapons reached out toward them. beams of pure energy that could cut through the strongest armor. The frigate dancing light took a direct hit and exploded, immediately. 11 more ships left. Return fire, Zexai ordered. The Kytheran weapons were beautiful, like everything his people made. They fired bursts of controlled plasma that looked like falling stars. The shots hit the enemy ships and made small explosions on their hulls. The damage was tiny, but it was something. More enemy fire reached them. The cruiser Singing Wind lost its engines and began to drift. Emergency signals came from the cruiser Bright Hope. Their life support was failing. "Sir," the tactical officer called out, "I am detecting massive energy readings from the outer system. Something very large just appeared near the ice giant." Zexai barely heard him. He was watching 3 more of his ships die in balls of fire. "What did you say?" "Something just came out of hyperspace near Cathera 7, sir, but the energy signature is wrong. It is not like any drive system in our database." "Show me." On the main screen, a fuzzy image appeared. Space itself seemed to be tearing open like cloth. Raw energy poured out of the hole. Whatever was coming through was not using normal hyperspace technology. It was forcing its way into reality through pure power. "Sir, whatever it is big. Cruiser-sized at least, and it is heading this way very fast." Zexai stared at the image. In all his years of studying space technology, he had never seen anything like this. The hole in space was violent and angry, like a wound that refused to heal. Then he heard something impossible. A sound was coming through their communication systems. It should not be possible to hear anything in the vacuum of space, but somehow noise was reaching every ship in the system. It sounded like screaming mixed with machine noises and raw anger. "What is that?" his communications officer whispered. Before anyone could answer, the sound resolved into something that might have been words. The language was unknown, but the tone was clear. Something very dangerous was coming, and it was not happy about what it found. Zexai looked back at his dying fleet, then at the mysterious signal from the outer system. He did not know what was coming, but after 3 days of watching his people die, he was ready for anything. Maybe, just maybe, help had finally arrived. Lieutenant Hexara had been staring at sensor screens for so long that her eyes hurt. She was the youngest officer on the bridge of the Crystal Harmony, barely 25 years old. 3 days ago, she had been excited about her first real assignment. Now she was watching her entire species die. The sensor readings made no sense. Something was happening near the outer ice giant, but her equipment could not identify what it was. Space was bending and twisting in ways that should not be possible. Energy readings were going off the scale. "Admiral," she called across the bridge, "the distortion is getting bigger. Whatever is coming through is really big." Admiral Zexai was coordinating the final attack on the Devourer fleet, but he glanced at her screen. "How big?" "At least as large as one of their battle cruisers, sir. Maybe larger. And Admiral, the energy signature is completely unknown. It does not match anything in our databases." The hole in space continued to grow. Through her sensors, Hexara could see reality itself being torn apart. Whatever technology was creating this effect was incredibly powerful and completely alien. It was not Altarian technology or Centauri, or anything else she had studied at the Academy. On the main enemy flagship, ancient machine intelligences were also watching the distortion. The Devourers had absorbed the knowledge of 17 different species. Their databases contained thousands of different technologies and weapons, but this was something new. For the first time in millions of years, the Devourer Collective felt something like curiosity. They paused their attack on the dying Kytheran fleet and turned their sensors toward the outer system. What could create such a violent distortion in space-time? The tear in reality reached its maximum size and something began to emerge. At first, it was just a shadow against the stars. Then more details became visible. It was definitely a ship, but unlike any vessel in known space. The hull was dark gray metal that seemed to absorb light. Instead of smooth curves like Kytheran ships or geometric angles like Devourer vessels, this ship looked rough and dangerous. Armor plating was thick and scarred, as if it had been in many battles. Weapon ports covered every surface, and they were all pointed forward like the ship was built for charging straight at enemies. "My God," Hexara whispered, using an old Kytheran expression. "Look at the size of it." The ship was massive, easily 3 times larger than Admiral Zexai's flagship. But it moved with surprising grace for something so big. More importantly, it was accelerating toward the inner system at incredible speed. Then the sound started, again. It came through every communication system in the fleet simultaneously, The noise was electronic and organic at the same time, like machines and living creatures screaming together. But underneath the chaos, there was a pattern. It was trying to be a song, a war song full of anger and promise. The sound grew louder and more focused until it resolved into words. The language was completely unknown, but their translation computers worked frantically to decode it. Unknown vessel. Admiral Zexhai broadcast on all frequencies. Please identify yourself. This system is under attack by hostile forces. For a moment, there was no response. The huge ship continued accelerating toward them, its engines leaving a trail of distorted space behind it. Then their communication systems crackled to life with the reply. The voice was strange, higher pitched than most Kithrans, but with an odd musical quality. When the translation finished, the words made Hexara's hearts race with hope. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Confederation warship Fenris. We received your distress call approximately 47 days ago. We regret the delay. We were busy introducing ourselves to some machine problems 3 sectors over. Terran? Hexara quickly searched the databases but found nothing. No species called Terrans or humans existed in any known records. Captain Chen's voice continued. Message to any surviving Kitharan forces. Get clear of the primary engagement zone. Message to the Devourers. You picked the wrong species to mess with today. More distortions began appearing throughout the outer system. Space tore open in a dozen places, each hole birthing another impossible ship. They were all different designs, as if built by separate cultures that happened to share the same species. Some were sleek and fast-looking. Others were heavily armored blocks of metal and guns. A few looked organic, like they had been grown instead of built. Beowulf reporting successful translation. Ready to start the party. Ragnar online. Time. To show these tin cans what evolution looks like. Valkyrie standing by. Let us teach these machines about pack hunting. The names meant nothing to Kitharan databases, but the tone was unmistakable. These were predators, and they were very confident. On the Devourer flagship, probability calculations ran at maximum speed. The machine collective tried to analyze these new ships, but the data made no sense. The vessels were too aggressive, too varied, too willing to sacrifice efficiency for raw firepower. No known species built ships like these. More importantly, the humans were not afraid. Every other species the Devourers had encountered showed fear when facing their overwhelming numbers. These newcomers sounded excited, as if they were looking forward to the battle. Captain Chen's voice cut across all frequencies again. Kitharan fleet. This is Fenris. We count 16 ships in our advance group. But do not worry. The main fleet is about 6 hours behind us. They got delayed cleaning up a Devourer stronghold in the Vega system. They send their regards and approximately 400 antimatter warheads as an apology gift. Admiral Zexhai felt his 3 hearts skip beats. The Vega system was where the Devourer fleet had come from. If these humans had actually defeated a Devourer stronghold, they were far more dangerous than they appeared. Captain Chen, he broadcast, back. This is Admiral Zexhai of the Kitharan Defense Fleet. We are grateful for any assistance, but you should know that you are facing several thousand enemy ships. Our tactical analysis suggests retreat would be wise. There was a pause. Then, what sounded like laughter came through the communication system. Admiral, with respect, we humans have a saying. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. Besides, we did not travel 47 days just to run away from a fight. On her sensor screen, Hexara watched the human ships take formation. They were not following any tactical doctrine she recognized. Instead of staying in safe formation, they were spreading out like hunters surrounding prey. Each ship moved independently, but somehow they all seemed to know what the others were planning. Sir, she called to Admiral Zexhai. The human ships are approaching maximum weapon range of the Devourer fleet. Energy signatures suggest they are powering up some very large guns. The Admiral looked at his tactical display. 16 unknown ships against thousands of Devourer vessels. It should be suicide. But something about these humans made him think they might actually have a plan. All Kitharan ships, pull back to minimum safe distance, he ordered. Let us see what our new allies can do. As the Kitharan ships retreated to relative safety, the human vessels continued their approach. Captain Chen's voice came over the communication channels one more time. All ships, this is Fenris. Remember, we are not here to win pretty. We are here to make sure these mechanical parasites never hurt anyone again. Show them why humanity earned its reputation the hard way. The first human ship, the Fenris, suddenly accelerated to impossible speed. Instead of slowing down as it approached the enemy fleet, it got faster. Hexara realized with shock that it was going to ram the largest Devourer ship. The battle for Cathara Prime was about to begin, and nothing would ever be the same. The impact between the Fenris and the Devourer harvester ship was visible across half the solar system. Instead of exploding on contact like any reasonable ship would, the human vessel punched straight through the enemy's hull like a spear through paper. Admiral Zexhai watched in amazement as the Fenris disappeared completely inside the massive enemy ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then explosions began blooming along the harvester's hull from the inside. "This is Fenris." Captain Chen's voice came through the communication channels. She sounded slightly out of breath but very satisfied. "Hull, breach successful. Beginning internal demolition. Beowulf, you are clear for your attack run." "How is she still alive?" Lieutenant Hexara whispered. Before anyone could answer, the second human ship began its attack. The Beowulf did not ram its target. Instead, it performed a maneuver that made every Kitharan pilot watching feel sick. The ship spun completely around while moving at full speed, bringing all its weapons to bear on a single enemy cruiser. What came out of those weapons was unlike anything in the Kitharan databases. Instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, the humans were firing solid metal projectiles at incredible speeds. The ancient technology of kinetic weapons pushed to impossible extremes. Each projectile hit with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The Devourer ship's armor, which had been designed to stop energy weapons, cracked and shattered under the physical impacts. Pieces of the enemy ship flew off in all directions. "Ragnar to all ships," came another human voice. "I've found their command frequency, patching you through to their coordination network. Time to introduce some chaos into their perfect order." What happened next made Admiral Zexhai question everything he thought he knew about space warfare. Somehow the humans had broken into the Devourer collective network. Instead of stealing information or shutting down systems, they began flooding the network with noise. But it was not random noise. Human voices began screaming what sounded like battle cries. Images of previous human victories flashed across Devourer visual systems. And somehow, impossibly, music began playing through the machine intelligence's communication channels. The music was unlike anything Kytherans had ever heard. It was heavy and driving, full of drums and electronic instruments that seemed designed to make listeners want to fight. The rhythm pounded like a war drum, and human voices sang about victory and death and never giving up. The effect on the Devourer fleet was immediate and catastrophic. For millions of years, the machine collective had operated in perfect coordination. Every ship knew exactly what every other ship was doing. Now that coordination was breaking down as the collective intelligence struggled to filter out the human interference. Ships began drifting out of formation. Weapon targeting became erratic. Some Devourer vessels actually began firing on each other as their coordination systems failed. "All Kytheran ships," Captain Chen's voice came from inside the harvester she had rammed. "Human tactical doctrine says this is when you hit them with everything you have got. These machines are old and experienced, but they are not used to prey that fights back with this much enthusiasm." Admiral Zexhai looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at their screens in disbelief. The humans were not just fighting the Devourers. They were confusing them, frustrating them, and somehow making them angry. He had never seen machine intelligences show emotion before. "All ships," he ordered. "Attack formation. Follow the humans' lead. Show our rescuers that Kitharans remember how to fight." The remaining Kitharan ships accelerated toward the enemy fleet. For the first time in days, Admiral Zexhai felt hope growing in his chest. The human ship Valkyrie was demonstrating a new kind of impossible maneuver. It flew straight at a formation of enemy fighters, then at the last second opened up like a flower. Hidden weapon ports all along its hull fired simultaneously, creating a sphere of destruction that vaporized dozens of Devourer drones. "Valkyrie to hammer," the ship's captain called. "That big ugly thing in the center looks like their command ship. Want to try a little coordinated insanity?" "Hammer here." "I thought you would never ask. Sending you my attack plan now." "What the?" Humans called an attack plan made every Kitharan tactical officer who saw it immediately check their sensors for equipment failure. The plan required 3 human ships to use a gas giant's gravity well to slingshot around the enemy formation while firing everything they had. It was tactically unsound, strategically questionable, and completely insane. It was also absolutely devastating. The 3 human ships dove toward the gas giant at speeds that should have torn them apart. At the exact moment of closest approach, they fired their engines at maximum power and whipped around the planet like stones from a sling, The gravitational forces involved should have crushed their crews, but somehow the humans survived. As they came around the far side of the gas giant, all three ships opened fire at once. Their combined firepower, focused by the gravity-assisted maneuver, hit the Devourer command ship like the fist of an angry god. For the first time in millions of years, a Devourer command vessel took significant damage. Ancient armor that had survived the destruction of 17 species cracked and split. Internal systems that had never failed began shutting down. On the Devourer flagship, the collective intelligence experienced something new: confusion. These humans did not fight like any known species. They took risks that no rational beings would consider. They used tactics that made no logical sense but somehow worked anyway. More importantly, they seemed to actually enjoy the combat. Every other species the Devourers had encountered fought out of fear or desperation. The humans fought with joy, as if violence was their natural element. "This is Captain Chen to all ships," the Fenris captain's voice came through the channels. "The main fleet just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Admiral Martinez sends his compliments and 47 additional warships. Lieutenant." Hexara checked her long-range sensors and felt her heart skip again. 47 new contacts were appearing at the system's edge. Each one was broadcasting human identification codes. "Additionally," Captain Chen continued, "Admiral Martinez wants everyone to know that the Devourer stronghold in the Vega system no longer exists. We made sure of that before coming here. The Vega stronghold had been considered impregnable. It had coordinated Devourer operations across dozens of star systems. If the humans had actually destroyed it, they were far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. On the main Devourer command ship, probability calculations were running at maximum speed. The collective was trying to determine the best course of action against an enemy that defied all known parameters. The humans were too unpredictable, too willing to sacrifice themselves for abstract concepts like protecting strangers, too enthusiastic about violence for violence's sake. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers began to consider the possibility that they might lose this battle. Admiral Zexhai watched another human ship perform an impossible maneuver that resulted in 3 enemy vessels exploding simultaneously. These strange beings had appeared from nowhere and turned a hopeless battle into something that might actually be winnable. "Sir," his communications officer called, "Captain Chen is requesting permission to coordinate a joint attack on the enemy flagship." Zexhai smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Tell Captain Chen that the Kitharan fleet would be honored to fight alongside humanity. Let us finish this together." The combined attack on the Devourer flagship was unlike anything that had ever happened in galactic warfare. Human and Kitharan ships worked together in ways that should have been impossible, given that they had never trained together and barely spoke the same language. But somehow it worked. Captain Chen had somehow taken control of the harvester ship she had rammed and was using its own weapons against the Devourer fleet. The massive vessel, designed to strip planets bare, was now firing on its former allies with devastating effect. "This is Fenris." Chen's voice came through the communication channels. "I have control of their planetary cracker beam. Kitharan ships, I need you to herd that command ship into my firing line. Can you do that?" Admiral Zexhai felt a fierce grin spread across his face. "Captain Chen, it would be our pleasure. All Kitharan ships, formation Delta 7. We are going to push that monster exactly where our human friend wants it." The Kitharan ships moved with elegant precision, their plasma weapons creating a wall of fire that forced the enemy flagship to change course. The ancient Devourer ship was massive and powerful, but it was also slow to maneuver. Step by step, the Kitharans pushed it toward Captain Chen's firing solution. Meanwhile, the human fleet was demonstrating their unique approach to space combat throughout the system. The ship called Ragnar was somehow inside the Devourer communication network, broadcasting human war songs at maximum volume. The effect on the machine collective was devastating. Ships that had coordinated perfectly for millions of years were now bumping into each other and firing wildly. The Beowulf had developed a new tactic that its crew called boom and zoom. The ship would accelerate to maximum speed, fire everything it had at a single target, then use its momentum to escape before the enemy could respond. In the past 10 minutes it had destroyed 8 Devourer cruisers using this method. "Hammer to all ships," came another human voice. "Their big ugly command ship is almost in position. Everyone ready for the finale?" "Valkyrie ready. Target locked. Thunder. Ready, all weapons charged. Kitharan flagship ready," Admiral Zexhai added. "Let us end this." The Devourer command ship was ancient beyond measure. It had been built when the galaxy was younger and contained the absorbed knowledge of 17 different civilizations. Its armor could withstand the explosion of a star. Its weapons could crack a planet in half. It had never been seriously damaged in millions of years of warfare. That was about to change. All ships, fire, Captain Chen commanded. The combined firepower of the human and Kitharan fleets focused on a single point on the command ship's hull. Human kinetic weapons, Kitharan plasma beams, and the stolen Devourer planetary cracker all struck within seconds of each other. The ancient armor held for almost 3 seconds. Then it began to crack. What happened next was visible from the planet's surface. The Devourer flagship, kilometers long and older than most stars, began to break apart. Internal explosions lit up its hull like a chain of dying suns. The machine, collective, which had survived since the beginning of galactic civilization, screamed across every frequency as its central processing core was destroyed. Target destroyed, Lieutenant Hexara reported, her voice filled with amazement. The command ship is gone. But the battle was not over. Thousands of Devourer ships still filled the system, and without their central command they were becoming unpredictable. Some began retreating toward the edge of the system. Others continued attacking anything that moved. A few seemed to be going completely insane, firing randomly in all directions. "This is Admiral Martinez of the human fleet," a new voice came, through the communication channels. "We have arrived with 47 additional ships. All Devourer vessels, you have one chance to surrender. Leave this system immediately and never return, or we will demonstrate why humanity does not believe in leaving enemies alive to cause trouble later." The response from the Devourer fleet was a massive coordinated attack on the newly arrived human ships. Every remaining enemy vessel opened fire simultaneously, creating a wall of energy that should have vaporized the human reinforcements. The human fleet did not even slow down. "Well," Admiral Martinez's voice continued, sounding almost disappointed, "we tried to be reasonable. All ships weapons free. Show them what we learned from the last 17 species these machines murdered." What followed was not warfare. It was extermination. The human main fleet had clearly been designed with one purpose: killing Devourers. Every ship carried weapons specifically created to destroy machine intelligences. They had electromagnetic pulse cannons that shut down computer systems. They had virus programs that corrupted artificial minds. They had kinetic weapons that could punch through any armor ever built. More importantly, they had learned from the previous battles. They knew every Devourer tactic, every weapon system, every defensive strategy. The machines had absorbed 17 civilizations, but humanity had studied the Devourer's methods and found ways to counter all of them. "Ragnar to all ships," came Captain Chen's voice from inside her stolen harvester. "I am reading massive power buildup in the remaining enemy ships. I think they are going to try to ram the planet." Admiral Zexai felt ice in his veins. If the Devourers could not harvest Cathara Prime, they would try to destroy it completely. Hundreds of Devourer ships were turning toward the planet, their engines glowing with desperate fury. "All human ships intercept course," Admiral Martinez ordered. "We did not come this far to watch a planet die. Kitharan fleet, protect your world. We will handle the runners." The next few minutes were chaos. Human ships threw themselves between the Devourers and the planet with reckless abandon. They rammed enemy vessels, blocked weapon fire with their own hulls, and detonated their own engines to stop the machine ships from reaching the surface. Admiral Zexai watched in amazement as the human ship Thunder actually grabbed a Devourer cruiser with some kind of magnetic field and threw it into 3 other enemy ships. The resulting explosion lit up half the sky. Captain Chen, still controlling the stolen harvester, used the ship's mining beam to slice through a formation of enemy fighters like cutting through paper. "This is fun." Her voice came through the channels. "We should do this more often." One by one, the remaining Devourer ships were hunted down and destroyed. The humans showed no mercy and took no prisoners. Every machine ship was reduced to scrap metal floating in space. Finally, the system fell quiet. The only ships left belonged to humanity and the Kitharans. "This is Admiral Martinez to Admiral Zexai." The human fleet commander's voice was calm and professional. "System secured. All Devourer vessels destroyed. How can we assist with damage control?" Admiral Zexai looked around his bridge at officers who were staring in shock at their displays. In the space of a few hours, humanity had appeared from nowhere and completely destroyed a Devourer fleet that had seemed unstoppable. "Admiral Martinez," he replied, "we are in your debt. Our planet is damaged, our fleet is broken, and our people are scattered. Any help you can provide would be gratefully accepted." Consider it done, Admiral. We humans have a saying. No one fights alone. We will help you rebuild, and then we will make sure the Devourers never threaten anyone again. Lieutenant Hexara checked her sensors one more time. The space around Cathera Prime was filled with debris from thousands of destroyed enemy ships, but mixed in with the wreckage were human vessels, already beginning rescue operations and clearing orbital lanes. The Devourers were gone. Humanity had arrived. The galaxy was about to become a very different place. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Zexai found himself aboard the human flagship Indomitable, sharing what his people called Harmony Water with Admiral Martinez. The human leader was smaller than most Kitherans, but there was something in her eyes that suggested she had seen many battles and won most of them. Outside the viewport, human and Kitheran ships worked together to clear the orbital debris. The wreckage of thousands of Devourer ships drifted through space like a metal graveyard. But already, human salvage crews were breaking down the larger pieces and turning them into useful materials. Your people work fast, Admiral Zexai observed, watching a human engineering ship turn a destroyed Devourer cruiser into building materials. Admiral Martinez smiled. We learned long ago that after you win a battle, you have to win the peace that follows. No point in defeating an enemy if you cannot help the survivors rebuild. Through the observation deck speakers, they could hear human work songs mixing with Kitheran harmony chants. The two species crews were learning to communicate through music and shared effort, even when they did not speak the same languages. Admiral Martinez, Zexai said carefully, I must ask, how did humanity find us? Our distress calls were sent to known species in this galactic arm. Humans are not in any of our databases. The human commander took a sip of Harmony Water and considered the question. That is a good story, Admiral. We received your first distress call about 50 days ago. At that time, we were engaged in our own fight against a Devourer stronghold that had been attacking human colonies. She gestured toward a display showing star charts. You see, humanity spread out through this part of the galaxy about 200 years ago. We established colonies on dozens of worlds, always moving, always exploring. When the Devourers found us, they expected to absorb another civilization quickly and move on. But they did not succeed, Zexai observed. No, they did not. Humanity has a history of being difficult to kill. When the Devourers destroyed our first few colonies, we did not surrender or hide. We got angry. We studied their methods, learned their weaknesses, and started hunting them across the galaxy. Admiral Martinez pulled up another display showing the locations of destroyed Devourer facilities. Over the past 50 years, we have systematically eliminated every Devourer stronghold we could find. When we received your distress call, we were finishing off the last major facility in this galactic arm. That is why it took you so long to reach us, Zexai realized. Exactly. We could have come immediately and fought alongside you with whatever ships we had available. But we knew that if we defeated the Devourers here while leaving their strongholds intact elsewhere, they would just return in greater numbers. So we chose to be thorough. The Kytheran admiral felt a chill run down his spine. You destroyed all of them? Every Devourer base in this part of the galaxy? Everyone we could find. Our deep-range scouts are still searching for hidden facilities, but we believe we have eliminated their ability to threaten any species in this region. Admiral Zexai set down his cup of Harmony Water and stared at the human commander. The Devourers had been the nightmare that haunted galactic civilization. For millions of years, they had destroyed 17 species, conquered hundreds of worlds, and seemed unstoppable. Humanity had been fighting them for 50 years and was winning. Why? He asked simply. You could have stayed hidden, protected your own worlds, and let the rest of the galaxy burn. Why risk everything to fight an enemy that was not directly threatening you? Admiral Martinez was quiet for a long moment, watching human engineers help repair a damaged Kitheran habitat. Admiral, may I tell you about the first human colony the Devourers attacked? Zexai nodded. It was called New Geneva, a farming world with about 2 million people. Families mostly who had left Earth looking for a place to build new lives. When the Devourers arrived, the colonists sent out a distress call just like you did. The human admiral's voice became quiet and sad. No one came to help them. The other species in the area were too afraid, too far away, or too busy with their own problems. New Geneva died alone, just like the 17 species before them. She turned to look directly at Zexai. When we found the wreckage of that world, we made a promise. No other species would die alone while humanity existed. We would come when called, no matter the cost, no matter the odds. Even for strangers, HFY said. Especially for strangers. Admiral, humanity learned something important during our own dark times. The galaxy is too big and too dangerous for any species to survive alone. We are stronger when we work together, when we protect each other, when we refuse to let anyone face extinction by themselves. As if to prove her point, a message came through the communication system. Admiral Martinez, this is Captain Chen on the Fenris. We just received a distress call from the Altarian system. Something called the Shadow Fleet is attacking their outer colonies. The Altarians are requesting immediate assistance. Admiral Martinez immediately moved to her command console. Captain Chen, how long to reach the Altarian system? 6 days at maximum speed, Admiral. Prepare the fleet for immediate departure. We will leave the reconstruction ships here to continue helping the Kytherans, but I want our main battle group ready to move within the hour. Already on it, Admiral. The crew is excited to meet these Shadow Fleet newcomers. Admiral HFY felt his hearts racing. Admiral Martinez, you cannot be serious. Your fleet has been fighting for days. Your people need rest. Your ships need repairs. The human commander smiled grimly. Admiral, somewhere out there, people are dying and calling for help. Kythera Prime is safe now, but the Altarians are not. As long as we have ships that can fly and weapons that can fire, we will answer the call. She paused at the door of the observation deck. Besides, my crews would mutiny if I tried to keep them from a good fight. Humans are strange that way. 6 hours later, Admiral HFY watched from the bridge of his repaired flagship as the human fleet prepared to leave. 47 warships arranged themselves in formation, their crews eager for the next battle. Admiral HFY. Admiral Martinez's voice came through the communication channels. We are leaving a squadron of reconstruction ships to help with the rebuilding. Captain Chen has volunteered to stay behind and coordinate relief efforts. We are grateful, Admiral Martinez. But what about your fleet? 47 ships against an unknown enemy. Admiral, humanity has been fighting impossible odds for 200 years. If these Shadow Fleet entities think they can terrorize innocent civilians, they are about to learn a very painful lesson. The human fleet began moving toward the edge of the system, their engines leaving trails of distorted space. Admiral HFY watched them go and felt something he had never experienced before: pity for their enemies. Sir, Lieutenant Hexara said from her sensor station. Long-range communications are detecting similar distress calls from 3 other systems. The Centauri Republics, the Vegan Trade Union, and the Tau Ceti Alliance are all reporting attacks by unknown hostile forces. Admiral HFY nodded thoughtfully. Lieutenant, send a message to all our remaining ships. Inform them that the Kytheran Defense Fleet is reforming and will be ready for combat operations within 30 days. Sir? Combat operations? The Admiral looked out at the human ships disappearing into hyperspace. Lieutenant, humanity has taught us something important. The galaxy is too dangerous for any species to face alone. It is time for the Kytherans to start answering distress calls too. He turned to face his bridge crew. Besides, our new human friends are going to need allies. Something tells me this is just the beginning of a much larger war. As the last human ship jumped to hyperspace, a new message came through the communication system. It was Captain Chen, broadcasting on all frequencies from her position coordinating the relief efforts. Attention all species in this galactic region. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Confederation. Humanity wishes you to know that the age of fighting alone is over. We are establishing a mutual defense network for all peaceful species. When one of us is attacked, all of us will respond. She paused, and when she continued, her voice carried the promise of violence against any who would threaten the innocent. To any hostile forces listening to this broadcast, you have a choice. Leave peaceful species alone or learn why humanity earned its reputation by fighting monsters in the dark. We suggest you choose wisely. Admiral HFY smiled, showing his sharp teeth. The Devourers were gone, but apparently there were other threats in the galaxy. Fortunately, humanity was very good at dealing with threats. The galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place.